time it is? Sharpie? Sharpie, do you know what
I
time
do.
it is? What
It's
time is
6 o'clock on a Tuesday night.
it? Yeah. Yeah. I think it's time. Hey, Andy, take it away.
What time is it? What time is it? It's prime time. It's prime time. What time is it? What time is it? It's prime time. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, did you miss us last week? Man, we missed you. But Sharpie broke the internet. Blame it on, blame it on, blame it on Sharpie. Hey. But tonight we're back with VP of Sales, Mr. Monte Montefusco. Hey, Monty. Welcome. It's PT with your humble host, Jay Parkin and Sharpie on prime time.
I missed it. I missed it. Last week we broke the internet.
I've been sitting in this spot for 7 days, just waiting.
Monty Montefusco, VP of Sales. Welcome to Taylor Primetime.
Thanks for having me again. And I would say this is the second best Tuesday to have me on primetime.
You know, the funny part is, for those of you watching, there was when we invited Monty onto the show, there was an email exchange, and he said, "I predict the future. I can see it. The internet's going to break." Well, the internet broke. You spoke too soon, Monty.
I did. I won't ever do that again.
Well, welcome back to Taylor Primetime. We are so excited to be here. No, really, we sat here for 7 days straight doing nothing. That's a joke. We did a lot of things. I'm wearing a Mets hat for you tonight, Monty. I didn't
Thank
know
you very much, Jay.
I didn't know which one to wear, so I, grabbed a couple. I've got a few. I think I've got one of every. Yeah. Oh, the Mother's Day hat for our moms who are watching. Father's Day hat. All good. All good to go. And, well, we're back. And today's episode is about the American Dream series. But before we get into that, I think we need to do a little hug your haters. You got a song for us, Andy?
I thought we had no haters this week.
We might have some love, though. We might have some love.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'll do a little bit different version, I think, this week.
All right. All right.
Everybody need a hug these days. Maybe now more than ever. Remember to keep your hugs possibly virtual. Stay safe. Don't take haters, babe. This week we got no haters. This week we got no haters. This week we got no haters. There's no haters to hug today.
It's so good. It's so good. I mean, we don't know what to expect from week in, week out with Andy's songs. We appreciate you, Andy. This is true. We did not get any haters this week. What we did get were some suggestions that were fantastic. One of the suggestions was, and it was spectacular. One of the suggestions was, if you break the internet, will you immediately send an email out to everyone and tell them? That would be
That's a good
fantastic.
idea.
I really would love to do that, but our wonderful coworker Sarah is definitely not watching this show right now because the playoffs are on, and it takes a little bit of work to do so. But we appreciate everybody. We did not get any hate, and we should all give each other a digital high five for sure. All right, digital high five. Let's get right into the show. First of all, Andy, are you still in the North Woods?
I'm in Northwoods, Jay.
You didn't bring that backdrop back to California with you?
I was thinking about it,
All right.
but I've not brought it back. I'm still up north. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Welcome back again, Monty.
Thank you.
Monte Montefusco, the VP of Sales at Taylor Guitars. What in the heck do you do for Taylor?
That's a great question, Jay. Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate being here. What do I do? I'm responsible for making sure these fine Taylor guitars get into stores around the world. I'm also responsible for working with our great retail partners and forging those relationships, enhancing those relationships between Taylor and themselves. And then also for the professional development of the sales team. You know, we always strive to get better, just like our partners in manufacturing always strive to make a better guitar. We're always going to strive to be better business consultants with our partners. So that's pretty much what I do. I get to travel the world and go to guitar stores. You know, if you sum it up, that's kind of what I do, and work with an amazing group of people, not just at Taylor, but on the sales team that share that same type of passion for musical instruments that I do, and that's been around my whole life.
It's pretty interesting. You came from retail. Yeah, you weren't always at Taylor. I mean, none of us were always at Taylor. But where did you grow up? Where did you come from? And,
Sure.
and how did you get to Taylor?
How did I get to Taylor? That's a great question. So I grew up in the New York area, spent my whole life there, and had a very supportive family that loved, New York Mets. There you go. I've been to a Mets game or two. But yes, grew up in New York, and I come from a line of folks in my family who made music. My great grandmother was a piano player at the Silent Theater, going back to the early 1900s, and that's what she did. And that just kept on getting passed down and passed down. And I started discovering music probably around 8, 9 years old, when I started to listen to, music that my folks would be playing. And if you think about 8 or 9 years old, that's kind of like late 70s, mid to late 70s, early 80s for me. And a lot of things, which at the time we didn't know it, but it became yacht rock, Jay. And kind of it's very hip now to listen to yacht rock. And man, do I know that stuff inside now, because that was just kind of my rock, growing up. But then I kind of caught the bug in my early teen years, like a lot of us did, to play guitar. And I wanted to play bass. I just wanted to be a bass player. I went to a high school where maybe there were 30 or 40, guitar players. Everyone played guitar, but there were 2 bass players. So my mom wisely made me take piano lessons for about 2 years before I had anything with strings on it other than a piano brought into the house. But that did happen. And as a bass player, you get work right away. I mean, it's just, to this day, I get, oh, you play bass? I've got this band. We need a bass player. Everyone always needs a bass player. So I started playing out and actually getting paid when I was about 15 years old. It only has 4 strings on it, so it's a lot easier. You learn pretty quick. But started doing that, and was very fortunate to play for a long time with some really great friends that I'm still friends with today. Matter of fact, spoke with one of them just 2 days ago, and got along really well for almost a decade of playing music together and forming a band and starting a business with a band. And during that time, I had another friend who worked at a local music store. So he calls me one day and says, hey, the holidays are coming up. We need more people. Do you want to come work part-time in the music store? It's November of that year. And I said, sure, why not? I'll go do that. And I did that for about 10 years. And it was an interesting time. So we're talking, mid 90s until the mid 2000s. And this thing called the internet, you might be familiar with it. We broke it last week, but back then it was just getting started. And we were a Taylor dealer. And I started learning a lot about Taylor guitars. And I had a lot of friends who were involved in the internet at that time. You have .com boom, right? If we think about the late 90s. So we started a website and started selling Taylor guitars. And we sold a lot of Taylor guitars and became really friendly with the company, and just was always amazed by the service level provided by Taylor guitars. They were absolutely the best. If you're a retailer and you have customers lined up waiting to buy guitars, and you need service, support, knowledge, sales training, you understand how important these manufacturer relationships can be to your business. and how they can make or break your business. And Taylor was there every step of the way. And when I had the opportunity to come work for the company in the mid 2000s, I snapped it right up. I just knew they treated their business like I treated my business. And it was exactly what I thought it would be. Just top notch, really caring about people, caring about the product, caring about each other's success. And it was really refreshing to be at a company where everybody felt that way. And you weren't fighting people that were, I'm just here for a little bit. That tends to happen a lot in music retail. But Taylor was, it's been everything I wanted it to be and everything I thought it would be. And it's been an incredible journey. And I think Andy shares a similar story too, coming from retail and coming to Taylor and just really appreciating the amount of effort that goes into what we do every day. It's tremendous.
Yeah. Now, when you're on the retail side of things, you get a different view of it too, because you're dealing with consumers, but you're also interfacing with manufacturers and service network, like Monty just stated. So after I had done a lot of retail, there were only 2 or 3 companies that I would even want to consider working for when I was ready for the next step of my career, and Taylor was definitely one of them because of the same things that he just mentioned.
Yeah, I think shortly after I started at Taylor, I was invited into this lunchroom area, and you were getting some cake for your 10th anniversary at Taylor Guitars, and I was like, oh, I can't wait to have cake. I'm not there yet. But
We do cake, yeah.
One of these days, I'm going to get some cake, and it's going to be. But anyway, so you guys travel. Both of you travel the world. I've heard so many stories. I've been in different parts of the country with you guys, but I have not been in different parts of the world with you guys. But we started this low budget, no budget guitar nerd talk show during this pandemic. And how has that affected Taylor? I mean, you guys aren't going anywhere. Obviously, you're at your house and you're in the North Woods. You decided to leave, but the rest of us are still here in San Diego. How has that affected us as Taylor?
Well, it's been a pretty abrupt change. We came from traveling, Andy and myself would travel upwards of close to 150 days, or in Andy's case, even more a year. So half your year is spent out on the road, visiting dealers, training folks on Taylor guitars, talking about the latest guitars that we've made. And, we have the industry trade show, NAMM, which a lot of people are familiar with, in January. And literally 4 weeks later, the world just totally changed. And one thing that we've done over the past decade, and something that, Kurt and Bob started the company on, was going out and meeting dealers and having those face-to-face relationships. And I look back now to where we are today, and I'm very thankful for those travels and those relationships that we've formed, because when you meet someone over Zoom, it's a much different experience than meeting them in person several times, sitting down, having a dinner, getting to know about them, their families, their business, right, their employees. And once you have what I would refer to as that relationship equity, it's a lot easier to sit down and have a conversation on a video screen about business and what we can do to really help each other survive, really. I mean, if you go back, to the end of March, it was really, how do we survive? It wasn't about thriving. It wasn't about, let's be super successful this year. It was like, oh my gosh, this just happened. And I think everybody felt that way. In any type of business you were in, is, oh my gosh, what's going to happen here? So it really kind of changed our outlook. And I would say the collaboration level at Taylor now has just gone through. It was super strong before, but right now it's through the roof across all departments. And I'm proud of that as a company. And it's something that makes you feel good about the people you work with.
It certainly is. You know what, Sharpie, we need to make the comment to something that was wonderfully stated in the feed real quick. When will Sharpie get his left-handed cake?
I got my left-handed cake 2 years ago.
Delicious.
Anyway, so out of this, I absolutely, Monty, I mean, the collaborative atmosphere right now at Taylor it's insane. I mean, I'm having Andy Lund do voiceover work from wherever he's at. Got to ship him a guitar so he can write a song and we can get a video made, etc., etc. It's pretty crazy. But let's get down to what we're here to talk about. And
Yeah.
during this pandemic, we did what the only thing that Bob and Kurt and Andy really know how to do, and that is make stuff.
Yeah.
So, how did the American Dream series happen? Where did it come from?
Well, it's an interesting story, and I think to tell the story properly, we need a little background on why the American Dream, right? So what I'm going to try and do for the next minute or two here, or 5, is take you from the early days of Taylor over here to what we did with the American Dream over here. Okay, so you really have to think about the early days of Taylor guitars. It's 1974, and Bob and Kurt pulled together some money from their parents, and with the great advice, Kurt's folks were telling him, "Hey, Kurt, you're really excelling at business. You understand business, but you need a partner who understands how to build guitars." And on the other side of town, the same conversation's going on at Bob's house, saying, "Bob, you're an incredible builder. You figure out how to make things better. And what would be really great is if you had a business partner who understands the nuts and bolts of the business side." So they both get together. They realize that they have the skill sets that each other needs for success. And they scrape together some money and buy a shop called the American Dream. And if I think about the American Dream from the stories that I've been told, I kind of picture it as a luthier's collective, a shop where people would go out, maybe they're surfing in the morning, but in the afternoon they're building guitars. And everyone had their workbench and they're building guitars underneath the American Dream brand name, okay? And selling guitars locally. And Bob and Kurt buy this shop, and it's October 15th, 1974. And they buy the American Dream shop. And if you think about the music of the 70s, right, especially kind of like the early 70s, mid 70s, there's a lot of acoustic music still going on. You've got Simon and Garfunkel, you've got Peter, Paul and Mary, you've got, Neil Young kind of playing some acoustic rock also. And acoustic guitar sales are pretty good. In the early years of the American Dream, which is now Taylor Guitars, are up and running. They're hiring a few employees, they're making more guitars every day, they've got customers coming in, and it feels pretty good. But you think about 1977 and what happens in 1977. Well, on one side of the Atlantic Ocean, over in the UK, you've got the early startings of punk rock, right? You've got the Clash, you've got the Sex Pistols coming out with this pure guitar-driven Les Paul, Marshall amp sounds blasting out and kind of causing a whole new movement over there. And then you swing back over to the United States, and John Travolta's on the big screen, and Saturday Night Fever comes out. You got it. And disco is really coming to a forefront. And all of a sudden, the acoustic music scene is kind of decimated by DJs and punk rock. And the music scene changes. And so what happened during those years? Well, the guitar I have right behind me here is a 1978 855. And that's a year, 1978, where Taylor made about 450 guitars. Not very many. Still decent for their size company, but they really had to shrink the company, lay some people off, and kind of get back into building the company back up. But Taylor wasn't the only company that was affected during these years. And I'm talking about the years from, like, let's say 1977 until the early 80s, let's say at 1983, 1984. And during that time, other companies shrank too. And you have, our colleagues over at Martin Guitar, they had gone from a high of about 20,000 guitars in the mid 70s. And by 1982, they had gone down to 3,300 guitars. So you think about the playing field then, it might have seemed like a monumental climb to get from 450 guitars a day to 20,000 guitars a day to be part of that competitive landscape. But all of a sudden you're going from about 450 guitars, 500 guitars to 3,300. Boy, that's something that's a lot more achievable. Fast forward another decade, and it's November 26, 1989. And this cable music television show comes on the air. And as the host tells you what this show is going to be about, it's the first episode of MTV's Unplugged. Host is talking about what the show is about. It's about rock bands coming on TV and playing acoustic guitars. And the camera pans back on Squeeze, right? It's Glenn Tilbrook and Chris Difford. And Chris Difford is playing a 712E on MTV's Unplugged. It's the first acoustic guitar you see on the first episode of MTV's Unplugged, and it's a Taylor guitar. And MTV Unplugged kind of brought two worlds together. Go back to 1974. You really had electric bands and you had acoustic bands. You didn't really have too much crossover. Neil Young might have been the exception on that. You know, he did acoustic and electric. But for the most part, there were rock bands and there were acoustic folk rock bands. MTV's Unplugged changed that to this day, to the point where a rock band could have a ballad that you go to prom and dance to, right? You had bands like Bon Jovi, bands like Kiss, Extreme, all these different acts that now picked up acoustic guitars and formed a whole new audience. And from there, the acoustic guitar market just started accelerating, and we've been on a wild roller coaster ever since. Taylor was there on day one, scene one of MTV's Unplugged, and now we're a leading acoustic manufacturer in the world. So something that's really proud. So you think about the early years being pretty good, and then some really, really lean years in there. And when COVID hit, we instantly went back and thought, oh man, this could be a really lean time in the history of the company. And there was such drive to keep things going. I remember it just clear as a bell, those days in late March talking about, you know, survival and making sure the company was still going to be around. And Andy quickly introduced the idea of a version of our guitars that could be made a little bit faster, a little bit less expensive, and we could get out there pretty soon. So I want to say it was the last week of March, the concept was introduced. On April 9th, we saw some guitars. At the end of April, it was probably actually the very end of April, the name American Dream was chosen to pay respect to the original company, the scrappiness nature, the fight to stay in business. You know, how Kurt and Bob did not give up during those lean years. They kept on going, and it was representative of we're going to keep on going. So I'm going to call it March 27th. That could have been a Sunday for all I know, but I'm going to say the late March, the concept was introduced. On the 9th of April, we saw guitars. On the 30th, we had a name for it. And on May 27th, we started production on the American Dream series. And in all my years at Taylor, I've never seen something introduced so quickly from a concept to a product that was rolling through manufacturing during that time. So that's a little history on the American Dream guitar. The response was astounding. We're so used to being, to showing things at trade shows and having big product launches and introductions. This was a truly sales team, pick up the phone, call your dealers, and tell them what we're doing. And we sold thousands of them in the first 2 weeks, just without, almost sight unseen over the phone. And it was a tremendous response. And since then, appetite for guitar has been incredible. It's been absolutely astounding, and it's so reassuring and reaffirming that we're all in the right business. In challenging times, people turn to music for comfort, and we're seeing that by the tens of thousands of guitars each month that people are buying and learning together. We're seeing more people like sitting at home and learning something new together.
Man, I was there for the ride. I saw my first American Dream guitar. I saw three. We have three models. As some of you know, the one right behind Monty, the mahogany top, that's the AD27, probably in E. Then we have the AD17. So you've got an AD27 as well. An AD17 with a natural top on it. And then we have an AD17 black top. And excuse me, I saw those guitars. Ah, you've got both. Amazing.
This is why I'm not coming home, Jay. I have no reason to come home. I got everything.
Yeah, you want to hear the worst part about that is I have two American Dream guitars in my living room, and they're both right-handed, and I can't try them at all. It's like the worst thing that could happen to me.
That's amazing. Excuse me. And so I saw guitars on a Monday, and I had to film that. We had to make the content, the any sort of promotional content for this. So I saw guitars on a Monday and had content completed on a Thursday, and we launched the content, the video, on a Friday. 5 days, 4 days. And it's probably one of the most cinematic things we've ever done. So it was really fun. I mean, the whole thing, you talked about punk rock and you talked about disco. It felt like where punk rock and disco meet, right? Like, we were scrappy and just punk rock, getting all this stuff done and designing and making these guitars and moving fast. But the fast moving part felt like a dance. It was absolutely incredible. And you said they've been well received. Have you had any feedback from dealers? Have you had any feedback from artists? Or I know I've had feedback from artists, but have you had any feedback from dealers on the response in the stores?
Yeah, I think one of the most flattering responses to a new guitar introduction is, I sold the 3 you sent me. I need 3 more as soon as possible. And we're hearing so much of that. The success of this guitar has been absolutely tremendous. It's been really well received. And the interesting thing, we didn't know what to expect when this all started. And it was just, let's at least cover this segment of the marketplace in case that's where people want to land. But what we've seen is across the board, from baby Taylors through 900 series and even presentation level guitars, the demand for musical instruments right now is absolutely incredible. And it's really a testament to the power of music and the comfort it can provide people in all times, but especially, when times are uncertain.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Sharpie, have you had any feedback from some of the artists that you're working with?
The reason why I have those in my living room right now is I got them back. There was a showcase. I think it was 4 bands, and they did like this recorded live at one of the venues in San Diego. And one of the people that was there told me, it's like, I couldn't get the guitars out of people's hands. Like, they didn't want to give them back, and it was that whole testament to, hey, this is the guitar player's guitar for you. If you're a working musician, like, you definitely want to check out one of these. And there were people that weren't necessarily Taylor fans there that picked him up, and he told me, he's like, yeah, you've got some new fans with this guitar. So it was cool hearing all of that stuff. And if you're into American Dream and in the Grand Pacific shape, I mean, that's where you can really get your foot in the door on the shape, right? So why not check it out?
Yeah, I have a little feedback. I've been playing this mahogany guitar for about 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
And what's really amazing about this time that we have right now within the company is that we have this amazing foundation that Bob and Kurt have built that allow Andy to do whatever he wants, which is always a good thing. He has the resources that he can dream up ideas, and he can make his vision of things an actual reality. And so, and we're still learning about V-Class, right? I think this is the first mahogany Sapelli V-Class Grand Pacific guitar. I think if you put all those things together, that exact wood combination, right? So it's a new sound. All of a sudden, it's a sound that we've never had. And I have to say that this is my favorite mahogany top guitar that we've ever made, playing it. It's like it. I love it.
Now,
you also have to bring it back when you come.
yeah, you have to bring it back.
It's not yours.
I'll sell it to you.
You already got
That's my
one.
job, actually, to sell it to you. So
That's
We'll talk.
That's the deal. He'll sell it to you for sure. So these are a little bit different. Okay, we had a question that we can maybe touch on in the feed. On the black top, the edge is chamfered spruce. It's not painted black, right? Can you talk about some of the specs on these guitars?
Sure. I think a lot of people want to know why these guitars, why now, and how have we accomplished what we've done to offer a value price point on these instruments during this time. And one of the neat things that allows us to do this is our ability to, take a guitar like the Blacktop and mask off the edge. So what you get is a really nice edge treatment on the guitar that accentuates not only the body shape, but the color differences between the black top, the back and the sides, and the spruce edge. So that's one way when we don't have to bind the guitar. That saves a little bit of time, not a ton of time, but it saves a little bit of time, but it actually gives you a beautiful appearance on the guitar and coordinates really wonderfully with the sound hole materials.
Yeah, and the finish on that guitar. Explain the finish just a little bit, because it's 2 mils. It's like it's a 2 mil painted finish. So if you've picked one of these instruments up, you can actually feel some of the grain in the wood. It's really interesting.
Yeah, the finish really has a low dampening factor, right? So it really allows the guitar to breathe and be alive. And it's one of the major differences on this guitar. It's a little bit faster to apply, but you really get to hear the nuances of each piece of wood, right? So typically on a Taylor guitar, as it goes to the factory, there are finishes and wood selection during the process that gives you a pretty consistent result throughout each model, from guitar to guitar within a certain model. And these are also consistent, but you're really going to pick up on the individual characteristics of each piece of wood. Another part of this guitar was also our ability and desire to use what we refer to as character grade wood. So you'll still see things in these, which I like to call as, identifying fingerprints or thumbprints, or just, character in each guitar. So you'll always know it's yours. No two American Dream guitars are exactly the same. And people seek that out, much like with our ebony on our 800 series, right? When we go with the colorful ebony on those guitars, people seek out identifying characteristics that will say, I'll always know that's my guitar. Even 20, 30 years from now, I can pick it out of a lineup. And these American Dream guitars, you'll be able to do that. And they just truly, like Andy said, they have an incredible character to the sound that's really reflective of these times.
Yeah, I think when I first saw that blacktop guitar, I kind of lost my mind a little bit, right? Because when Andy designed, and I first saw the Grand Pacific shape, and the one that I fell in love with was a 517, so roasted spruce top with a mahogany back and side. And I said to Andy Powers, I would love it if I could buy a custom guitar off of you. And he said, really, what would it be? And I said, I want a 517, but I want a black finish on it, and I want dot inlays, right? And then all of a sudden, this American Dream guitar came out, and I was like, you made it. I can buy it now. This is fantastic. I mean, playing these guitars and recording these guitars, I can tell you that they are the real deal. And Andy, I would agree with you. I think, for me, the AD27 is also my favorite mahogany guitar, hands down.
Okay. There was a question in the feed, I think, that was asking like the difference between the Blackwood mahogany, the 327, and the AD27. And in a short description, the way that I would describe the AD27, and it's a good thing, is that it's got a super cool lower fi sound. It's lo-fi, which a lot of our guitars are. You think about like a Builder's Edition 816. That's a super hi-fi, high definition guitar, right? Immersive experience for the listener and the player. This guy is just the little guy that you want with you when you're sitting on outside on a log in the North Woods.
Because that's what you've been.
Very descriptive, yeah.
That was very descriptive. That was awesome. So anyway, that's kind of it in a nutshell. There's something else about you got a question, Sharpie?
Oh no, there was a question that came in the feed that Denise asked, and it's more on the production side, Monty.
Cool, go for it.
And it's how many of these models are we able to produce in a month, with all the demand that we're obviously seeing with this?
Sure. We're producing hundreds of these every month, and demand definitely exceeds capacity right now, for sure. But we intend to continue doing this. You know, American Dream is going to be part of the Taylor lineup. This isn't just a temporary limited edition guitar to get us through the next couple of months. This is a guitar that deserves to live. Like Andy said, he's finding nuances of this guitar that don't exist in the Taylor line. And there's a reason to have this as part of your collection. And we will continue. And who knows, maybe it'll even expand further beyond the current model offerings.
You know something we don't know, huh?
Maybe it'll expand further beyond the current model offerings.
What do you mean?
What are you trying to say, Monty? You know what? Somebody asked that. Someone said we should. Text said we should give away an American Dream guitar for tonight's prize. I'm sorry. We have 2 autograph books of Bob's books. So that's all we got this week. But maybe one of these days we got to talk to Monty.
Are we getting budget for the show for big giveaways?
No, but I think the 3 of us would have to buy one from Monty in order to.
Oh.
We'll see how that goes. Anyway, so let's go back to specs real quick. Let's go back to something really cool on these guitars, and that is there's a different wood on that fingerboard.
Yep.
What in the heck are we talking about here? So we're using eucalyptus on the fingerboard, the bridge, and the headstock veneer. Can you tell us about that choice? Why did we do that?
Sure. Well, eucalyptus is a local wood, right? So it's North American wood. It's available here. The great thing about eucalyptus is the characteristics, the density of it, the tonal characteristics of it are very similar to ebony. It's one of the few woods that actually can hold frets as well as ebony can do. And, you know, the world's changing. We've just lived through a period of CITES, for those of you who are familiar with that, where certain woods are regulated more than others. And ebony is not currently on that list, but sure, someday it could be. And so any good business is going to plan for the future and make sure that we're not stuck with a single source of a product that we need for every single guitar we make. So a little bit of diversification in our wood supply and our wood usage comes at a good time for us. And the eucalyptus is working out really well in the factory environment. We're just loving the way it feels and sounds. I've heard really great comments about the playability of the neck and the way the fingerboard feels underneath people's fingers. I've heard it, I heard one person say it's much faster than ebony. And I don't know if that's true or not, but there's definitely a great feel to that fingerboard. And it's basically preserving something that we hold dear, and that's making sure that we use wood, right? We're a company that wants to continue to use natural materials when we build our guitars. So by having the dual source of ebony, which is still on 98% of the guitars we make, and having the future opportunity of eucalyptus, we're ensuring that we will be continuing to use natural materials for our bridge and our fingerboard well into the future. So it's a good move. And like many things at Taylor Guitars, 10 years from now, we'll be really glad we made this choice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I would say that too. For those of you who haven't had your hands on one and you play it, for me, I feel that it's faster as well. I feel to me, it feels a little bit more rosewood-like than obviously ebony. And we've had artist reactions that are identical. I've had a couple of really great smoking players tell me, holy smokes, this thing is just super fast up and down the neck. It's really interesting. But I think the best part about the eucalyptus is, man, those guitars smell good. Oh.
Yeah, if you take it in the shower with you, it really just opens that up. It smells great.
Don't take it in the shower.
Rob already told us we can't take it in the shower, Sharpie. Come on, man.
Oh, yeah.
Left-handers, you know what? My goodness. Hey, it's
This
fine.
is definitely the best smelling guitar that we've ever made. The 8027 is the best smelling one. This one's
That's awesome. We did have a question in the feed that's awesome. That was good. Will do you think Eucalyptus will take the place of Ebony? Rob wanted to know.
I don't think it fully replaces ebony. No, I think we'll use it where we feel it's appropriate to do so. And ebony continues to be a really important part of our company, an incredibly important part of our company, right? Bob and Taylor made the big investment along with Medinter in Spain into the Krilikam ebony mill in Cameroon, Africa, a few years ago. And we have, permits to harvest the majority of the world's legal ebony. And we want to continue to use that. We still love the way it sounds. We love the way it looks and feels. So we'll continue to use ebony.
That's awesome.
All right, I got one for you because we've skirted around this twice now, and we're getting hammered in the comments.
All right, do it.
Are there plans to see the AD series expand to other shapes, Monty?
I thought I just dropped it.
We got so many emails about that in the thread, but it is something, as you mentioned, maybe not. It's where are we on that?
I'm going to say right now that we currently have our hands full with orders for the current lineup that we have with the American Dream model. And I believe, as time goes on, we'll make a decision on whether or not to introduce more body shapes in there. But if you know Taylor, we're constantly innovating. We're constantly striving to improve our offerings and meet what our customers are looking for, while still creating and innovating original ideas. And Bob carried that torch for many years, and Andy's running with it right now, and really giving us all these new products to come. So I will say, and this is something that's truly remarkable, during this whole time period, and you think about it, we had a full factory shutdown in both of our production facilities for quite a while during this time. Our product development team did not stop one bit. So we are on track for new model introductions, model updates, feature updates, moving into next year. So the future is really bright, and there's more coming. And I'm not going to commit on this session to saying that there's more American Dream offerings coming in the future, or when they're coming, but I'll have to come back on the show when they do.
Yeah. Okay, so someone just said Monty for president. So you're obviously doing great on the show already. But
we're not getting political, but we agree.
Yeah, I'd vote for you.
I would vote for Monty in a heartbeat.
I have a personal question. It's not from anybody in the feed, but more from my knowledge, because the artists that I work with are a lot different styled players than, say, Jay, and the artists that he works with. Would you say that the American Dream guitar is for a certain style of play? Is there a certain player in mind, or one of those across the board jack of all trade to have in your hands?
Man, I you know what? I look at the guitars I own. I don't own anything like that. And I love guitars. I've been buying guitars since I was, 15 years old. And I don't have anything that does that. And I'm going to defer it over to Andy because, I'm a bass player by trade, but I play guitar too. But Andy's a guitar player. So I'd love to hear his opinion on what he feels about that question.
I feel the same way. It's a voice. It's a different sound. The coolest thing about acoustic guitars sometimes is when you pick up one you've never played before and you get a new idea, or it compels you to sit there for an hour and play something you've never played before. I think these are real workhorse guitars. Like, we have, whenever we go around the world, we talk to people and they're like, I love my guitar, but I don't want to take it to the gig because it might get a ding in it, or it might get scratched. We want people to play guitars, play it. Yeah, it's going to get scratched. It's going to get dinged. That's okay. We fix it or don't fix it. Doesn't matter. But these guitars are not going to be so precious, I think, because they just are set up they're achievable for a lot more people because of the price point that they come in at, and they have a different sound, man. Like they sound different than I already said it once. The 8027 sounds different than the 300 series mahogany top guitar.
Yeah. And I would probably chime in and say just for yeah, I'm always been more of an electric player. I too am a way better bass player than I am a guitar player. But you often get a guitar for a certain thing, and then you get another guitar for a certain thing. We work with some artists, funny, oddly enough, right? We'll say Goo Goo Dolls. We'll say Johnny Resnick from the Goo Goo Dolls plays a different guitar for every single song in their catalog, right? Because they're tuned differently, they have different weird setups, they have so on and so forth. But just playing the American Dream guitars, I think, I think you need to buy all three.
There's always room for one more guitar.
100%. Ask Monty.
Yeah, I don't think that there's, a guitar for a particular person. I think about, someone like Sheryl Crow gets on stage with the biggest body acoustic guitar you could possibly have. And that would be something that would probably never be recommended, right? But she gets up there, she owns it, and she just belts things out. And then you have people that like to be a medium to heavier strummer, and they'll pick up a small body guitar and figure out how to make that guitar sing for them. So I really always recommend to folks, get out there and play. Get out and pick up a bunch of guitars and go check them out. I've been astounded by the resiliency of our retail partners, music stores, and what they've been able to accomplish. And what I'm hearing from more and more of them is that they're setting appointments and having people come in and providing really high level one-on-one service, something that you couldn't have gotten 6 months ago from a music store, but you can get it now. And they're taking precautionary measures. They're learning how to wipe down guitars and keep them clean so you can walk in and feel good about trying out different instruments and really finding what is best for you. And you'd be surprised sometimes. I often, part of my first job at Taylor was being a district sales manager and traveling throughout a territory and helping people really what we would call find your fit, right? We'd help them go through a series of guitars. And so many people came in with a notion of what they wanted, right? Either my friend told me I should get this guitar, or I saw on TV this guitar, or I've always wanted this guitar. They sit down, and when they have a consultation and they start playing different guitars, I'd say at least half the time, they walk out with something totally different than what they thought was going to be the instrument of their dreams, right? And to this day, I'll still get emails from folks that I encountered back then, just said, man, I still love, my 2007 Doyle Dykes signature model. I never thought I was going to buy it, but it's the one I want, right? So that's part of the joy of what we do, helping others find their fit in a guitar.
That is awesome. I think it's Q&A time. Let's get some questions going. You got some questions in the feed.
Yep, I got one right here.
Monty, thank you so much for giving us the history of not only the company and yourself, but how we put together, how we danced our way to the finish line with the American Dream Guitar Series. It's so good to hear. It's so much fun to listen to. Even, you're a great storyteller, so it's been spectacular. Sharpie, we got a bunch of questions via email. You want to dive in?
Yeah. Monty, you had just mentioned Find Your Fit, and those are some events that we do sometimes in stores, and obviously not right now with the state of the world. But Chris had asked, about 20 years ago, I attended a road show at Maximum Music in Mount Sinai, New York, and I bought an 855 CE. That baby is broken in now and sounds better than a 50-year-old Taylor competitor guitar. My question is, does Taylor do many road shows?
Well, I'd love to comment on that because it's possible. I don't think it was quite 20 years ago, but it's very possible and highly likely that I actually was at that road show. It was part of my territory, and a dear friend of mine, Rob, used to own that store, believe it or not. So very interesting that question comes up timely. So I might have been there. Taylor does do quite a few road shows. Obviously, that's been temporarily sidelined, and we're replacing it with, little Primetime, and we're working on some virtual road shows that we'll have coming through, maybe even as early as this fall, getting out there and doing it. But it's really, the concept of a road show is to bring the product knowledge out to customers, to help them form an opinion on what their next guitar should be. It's not as, it's a low pressure sales environment. We're not here to sell guitars. And just a quick story about that. Matter of fact, the story I just referenced about the Doyle Dykes guitar, I've been doing road shows for about 4 years. And every year, it was a store up in the Buffalo area of New York, customer would come in and ask the same questions and want to play the guitar. And I'd walk in, and this went on for 4 years straight. Same customer, and you get to know people just by being in the area, being the area rep. People love music stores and get to hang out there. And finally, after the 4th year, he comes over and, just got to know the guy a little bit and said hello and, how you doing? He's like, tonight's the night. He goes, ever since the first road show 4 years ago that I saw, I started saving my money and I put aside $100 a month and I'm here to buy that guitar tonight. That's awesome. So it's not about influencing the person to buy right on the spot. That's not our style. Our style is to really inform, educate, and help guide folks towards their next guitar. So we're hoping to get back in there. We know that these virtual events won't replace in person, and as soon as it's safe to do so, we'll get back out there and do road shows in person again.
Got any questions? I got one.
I got more, but you go ahead. You can take the next one.
I love this one. We're trying to get Monty not to skirt any more questions like he did. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Any plans to offer an American Dream as a 12-string? Woo!
Ooh, that's a great idea. That's a really good idea. Next question.
Go, Sharpie.
This is the best.
I got.
All right, here's one from Ron. What are the sonic differences, if any, between an Ebony Bridge and one of Eucalyptus?
That's a really good question, but the differences are so subtle, you'd be hard pressed to know the difference between them. It's even visually, there are super subtle differences, but not enough to make an impact on your buying decision. Would be my response there.
I don't know.
Andy.
This is a question from Doug, who says, I love the work Taylor has done with the American Dream series. I do want to speak up for those of us that prefer 1 11/16" nut width. Since the elimination of the 410R, we don't have a solid wood option from Taylor in that nut width. Is this available in this series?
Excellent question. It's not available in the American Dream series. However, since the introduction of V-Class, we have introduced that nut width change option on V-Class guitars. So you could choose a 317, a 327, any V-Class guitar that is not a 12 fret in our lineup can have a different nut width on it right now. So those options are back. They have been restored, and he's right in referencing when we first introduced V-Class that was not an option, but it is an option now.
Yeah. Good
I got one from Rob in the feed. What is that AD shape? So I can answer that. That's a Grand Pacific body shape. But the question here, and you may know this, Monty, because you are on the product development team. Also, is the Dreadnought basically defunct?
Good question. It is defunct in our line, except you can get one in a 200 series guitar. So you're still able to get a 200 series, but from 300 series and above, we are now featuring all original body shapes from Taylor guitars.
Sharpie.
All right. This one has nothing to do with American Dream, though. Steve asks, I play a T5Z and would love your opinion on an acoustic amplifiers.
Ooh, for a T5Z?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
One of the great features of a T5Z is the flexibility of that guitar. And you can go from acoustic to electric sound. So one of the things that I do recommend to extract the optimal performance out of that guitar is to actually use 2 amplifiers, an electric guitar of your choice, and then an acoustic amp. And there are a lot of acoustic amplifiers out there. It's really tough to make a single recommendation without really knowing the background. Are you performing on a stage? Are you performing at home? Or you just want something to monitor yourself on stage? It's really hard to make an exact brand and model recommendation based on a general question. my biggest piece of advice is really go demo amps. Like I just said, now's the ideal time to go into a music store and bring your guitar. Don't rely on the one that's hanging in the music store. If you're looking for an amplifier, I always, always, always recommend bringing your own instrument into the store. And if you can, find a store that specializes in acoustic instruments. If you're specifically looking to extract the best acoustic sound out of your guitar, try and find a store that specializes in acoustic guitars. Andy, do you have you're a T5 player, you've played them extensively. Any specific recommendations on an amp?
The recommendation I have is I've been wanting to say this for a couple of shows now because that's a common question people ask about amplifiers for acoustic guitar, and how to we had Terry Myers on the show a few weeks ago, and he was talking about how you get your best sound live. And what I failed to mention was what I like to do is play through a PA, and not a little guitar amp. If you think about it, these days you can get a small PA on a stick, on a stand that has maybe 2 to 4 channels. It's going to be less than the cost of your guitar if you bought a high-end USA-made guitar, or of equal value. I think a lot of people they think that, well, I'm not doing gigs, so I don't need anything like that. But that's how you really get a nice full sound, by moving a lot of air, And when you talk about playing a 914 CE or a really beautiful guitar through a little speaker like this, it's not going to cut it. In the end, I think you're going to be unhappy. You're kind of mismatched. You've got one of the greatest guitars in the world with something that's it fits in the corner. So think about that. Get a little nice PA, and then you can sing. You have friends over and jam. That's what I lean towards. I like the small, narrow, like the Fishman, the SA 2200, I think it is, or the SA 200. And everybody's got one these days. Yamaha has a cool one.
Yeah,
and
Bose.
For me, that's and then if you ever do get to the point where you're actually gonna play a gig or play at church or something, that's all you need. You don't need a monitor, because those things are designed so well, like the Bose system as well. You can put those in back of you, and they don't feed back. So you take away your need to monitor, and it's just all one source. You can really mix how your guitar and your voice sounds in the room through one source. And to me, lately I think that's where I like to be playing live.
That's awesome. I would agree with you. You know what? We didn't talk about that. Maybe next week we can touch on that a little bit more. We're diving into some signal chain stuff next week again. Sharpie, you got a question?
Yeah, this one comes from Sharpie. Any plans for a lefty American Dream?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, there's a stock code already. I ordered.
Yeah.
We got some left-handed artists, my friend.
It didn't come my way yet.
No. You're going to have to buy one, my friend.
Okay. I'll call Paul.
From
And
Monty.
Chris, this is a good time to remind everyone that every Taylor guitar is available left-handed at no additional charge.
And that's why he should be president. That's all I'm saying.
He's seen this show before.
He's seen the show before. That is fantastic.
Once or twice.
Okay. Have you seen any problems with Eucalyptus twisting? Eucalyptus is notorious for twisting.
We have not seen any problems with Eucalyptus twisting. Not at all. After so many years of processing wood and curing wood, there's a level of expertise at Taylor on how to properly dry wood, rehydrate wood, and utilize it. And we're exercising that every day. So we tend to avoid a lot of the problems that happen just based on the knowledge that our team has.
Yeah, when you listen to Bob tell the story about how it's cured and made ready to build with, it's not just a cheaper wood. We take it and it's shipped overseas, and it's treated to a specific way to make it look the color it is, and also to make it tough and rough and ready to go. And it's not like it's the end of the process, and it ends up being probably about the same as what it costs us to get ebony, but it's just that we're using different types of wood for the same part.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, and I will link in the description of this show for sure, but I may throw it in the feed over here. We just went live with the podcast that Cameron and I did with Andy Powers talking about the American Dream. So you can dive more into that. That's a little extra plug of some more content that we make here at Taylor Guitars. Sharpie, you got any more questions? Because if not, we'll dive right into Sharpie's question.
We can do that.
You want to go right into Sharpie's question?
Yeah,
Hey,
can I get...
Andy,
Yeah.
you got a tune for us?
Yeah, I might have a tune for you.
I can't do it without my
This is
song.
Sharpie's.
All right, here we go.
A life or guitar question. Which one will he choose? Or will he stump Montefusco? This ain't no time to snooze. Here comes Sharpie's question.
So good. It's so good. All right, Sharpie, go ahead. You got a question, Monty?
Best day of the week. All right, Monty. This one I'm going to ask you is life and music. If you could record a song with one artist, alive or dead, who would it be?
Oh man, you're not going to stump me because I'll come up with something. But record a song with one. I mean, it's got to be a Beatle. I mean, gosh, and it might not be Paul McCartney. It might be George Harrison.
All right.
Me too. That would be my Beatle. That would be my Beatle.
He's like, that's my
George
Beatle.
Harrison. I mean, I would agree. I mean, it's your answer. I mean, it's agreed. There's
You
no
can borrow it.
But I'm going to borrow it. I would
That's a good
too.
one.
George Harrison. I absolutely love George Harrison. That was a good one. And I think now that was a good one. That was a good question, Sharpie.
That was a really good question.
Maybe we should bring that
Good
one
at it.
back. Put that in a sticky note and ask that one again sometime because it would be wonderful.
Every 14th
we have-
episode.
He had an extra week to think about it because he was sitting there for 7 days. So he was like, "Nah, I don't like. I think I'll come up with a better question."
There you
I
go.
mean, this should be this. You're right. This is the 14th episode. We've done 14 things. We should be on our 15th, but whatever. We'll put that on the shelf. It's fine.
14 things in 15 weeks isn't bad.
No, it's not that bad. We're good. All right. You know what time it is? It's 2 minutes of sports time. 2 minutes of sports. Do you have a song for that, Andy? What?
No way.
He's
You got a
got a
sports
song.
involved song?
Or something to ponder.
My word.
All right. All right.
Hey Jay, here's a question. What's 2 minutes of sports in dog years?
In dog beers, I've only had 2. Okay. That's it. I like
Cheers.
it. That was a good one.
Doggy.
That is good. I don't even know. Ready, Monty? Monty,
Right.
I got 2 questions for you. One is, who is the greatest Met of all time?
Oh man, who's the greatest Met of this? It depends on your generation, right?
Okay.
So there's a lot of different answers to that question.
Who is your favorite Met?
Man, it's Mookie Wilson was my favorite Met growing up as a kid, right? And so this really cool thing happened to me, and it's tremendous. And Andy Lund was responsible 100% for it because we had a group of Japanese dealers come over to Taylor Guitars, and Andy decided to take them over to a Padres game one night. And through the relationships he has with ball players, a lot of ball players play guitar. We got to go on the field, for practice. And who is on the field because it was the Padres versus the Mets? It's Mookie Wilson. And it was just one of the moments of my life. Here I am, literally 30 years later, 35, how many years later, after watching Mookie Wilson play at Shea Stadium, in the 80s. And here I am standing next to him in San Diego. So very cool moment. So that's my answer.
That's awesome. That's a good one. I got some favorite Mets too, but we'll get into that later. This is about you. All right, so this is another good question. After this question, we're going to go into trivia and give away some books, and then we're going to wrap up the show. All right, here we go. Monty,
Yes.
how many Stanley Cups do the New York Islanders hold?
I'm familiar with 5, Jay. Is it 5?
No. The 5th one went to the Detroit Red Wings, who have 11, by the way.
So then it's 4.
In case Paul Tobias is still watching, the Detroit Red Wings still have 11 cups, Paul. Anyway, we're going for it. Yeah, you were right. 4, but we did some
4.
math. Good job.
3 in a row. They
You
were
did a
3 in
good
a row.
job. They did win 3 in a row. Monty was telling us how he was a fan of hockey, so hey, had to throw that out there. All right, we got some books to give away. Sharpie, you got some trivia questions? You guys know the rules, how this works, all right? Gabe is not allowed to answer. Neither is Paul.
I haven't seen Gabe in here tonight.
No, he's working probably on some videos. For sure.
For you?
We love him though. We miss you. Anyway, so I got a couple of Bob's books, and they are autographed for you here.
Signed?
They're signed by Bob Taylor. I watched him do it. So
Wow.
I have proof. It's real ink. All right, Sharpie, you got a question. Here are the rules. The first person to type the answer in the feed wins the book, and then we'll ask another question. All right, and we'll get your information afterwards. All right, here we go. Ready, Sharpie? Question number 1 for book number 1.
Wait, do we have a song for this? I see Andy with his guitar. Are we just going? I'm going for it. All right. So Monty talked the American Dream becoming Taylor guitars with the theme tonight. What year was Taylor founded?
This is the best part. It's all quiet.
And then we just stare at the screen.
And we stare at the screen. The delay. The delay's fantastic. Here we go.
Z!
Z wins an autographed book. Good job, my friend. You got it. Oh, Bart with a close second, but Z wins it. We'll get your information. We'll send it to you. Whoa.
Whoa.
They're coming in now.
so the feed caught up.
The delay is amazing. Look, everybody, man, we're going to have to get a harder question next time because they did a good job listening to Monty's story. All right, for book number 2, I don't know why I had to set down the first one to pick the second one, but I wanted you to see that there are actually 2. What is the next question, Sharpie?
Okay, but before we do that, Z and whoever is about to win this book, shoot me an email to primetime@taylorguitars.com with your mailing address, and we'll get that out to you. The next question comes from the Bob Taylor episode we did last time when we did Rapid Fire. All right, so you probably should have been watching if you're going to get this one. In regards to Bob's book, what famous sports figure who is also Bob's cousin wrote the foreword for his book?
Pause. I see it. I'm watching you live right now. My dogs are answering.
Chip is stoked. Boom.
Matt, good job. Phil Jackson. That is right.
Whoa, Matt's got the Matt Kowski is kind of like Monte Montefusco. That's cool. So I'm glad that works.
Like that.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's a great name.
Right on. Cool.
That is a great name. All
Yeah.
right. Yes, you're right. Phil Jackson, the Phil Jackson wrote the foreword for Bob's book. And that is how I figured out that Phil was Bob's cousin. I read the book, and then I gave the book to my mom, and she read the book. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Monte Montefusco, thank you so much for coming on the show. It is always a pleasure to hang out with you, even via Zoom.
Right.
Even via Zoom.
Monty, I do have a question for you, though.
Sure.
Will you come back and hang out with us sometime?
Yeah, I'd love to come back and hang out with everybody and, talk more about our guitars. Andy and I have great travel stories. We can probably do food recommendations around the world.
Yeah.
If that was a thing. So if you're interested in that, email Primetime and we can give you food restaurant recommendations pretty much anywhere around the globe. And I just want to say a big thank you to our craftspeople at Taylor Guitars. They're working hard during these times and all the time, but they're working extra hard right now to make sure that guitars are getting out there, getting to dealers and getting in players' hands so we can create more music. And I'm really excited about what's going on right now. There's a whole new school of people learning how to play guitar right now. And it's kind of, I'm expecting a full-on musical renaissance and guitar renaissance out of this. It'll be absolutely incredible. So just big thanks to everyone at Taylor. Thanks to our dealers, our dealer support network, and to all the Taylor fans out there. Appreciate it. And thanks, Mom and Dad, for the piano lessons.
It's so good. Thanks to have you, Monty. Monty is like an absolute one of my most favorite communicators at Taylor. He can tell a story and he can deliver bad news better than anybody. He can also deliver great news. And when he delivers great news, it makes us smile. So we're leaving this episode with a giant smile, all of us. We appreciate each and every one of you who take time on a Tuesday to come hang out with 4 guitar nerds to talk about baseball and guitars. We appreciate you so much. Sharpie, it's great to see you. Andy, stay safe up there in the North Woods. We need you. We need you back in California sometime. It'll be wonderful to have you back. But thank you again. Stay tuned till next week. We'll have more giveaways, trivia at the end of the episode. We're diving back into Signal Chain.
Who's coming on next week?
It is Rich Gachado.
Ooh.
And he is a blues king somewhere, and he's in a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame of Iowa, I believe. Like, he is a ripper, and he's a great storyteller, and he is Taylor's king of the dad joke. Yep. So I'm sure we're going to laugh. It is going to be fantastic. Thank you all for joining us. Andy, take it away, my friend.
What was it? What was it? It was prime time. Prime time. What the heck was it? What was that? Well, that was prime time. These days can be uncertain. Things are not always as they seem. 3 things you can count on are the new American dream. Guitars from California in the Grand Pacific shape. Hey, mahogany, I sure adore ya. I'm lucky to have played you on prime time on Tuesday. It was prime time. It was Tuesday. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Thanks.
See you next week.
We won't break the internet, I swear.